All right, let's just dive right into this explainer, because today we're going to completely dismantle what you probably think you know about the Book of Revelation. We're looking at a truly fascinating, evidence-based case that this ancient text has been fundamentally misunderstood for, about 17 centuries. We aren't looking at a literal countdown to global destruction here. Instead, we're looking at an incredibly intricate psychological map of the human mind.
To hook you right away, we really need to challenge this universally accepted concept. We're going to look at the apocalypse not as some impending doom, but as a present reality, one that we mostly ignore, honestly, due to our own social insulation. Think about this Terence McKenna quote for a second. We only have the luxury of anticipating a future apocalypse because we live inside a bubble of privilege. But what if the true apocalypse is happening inside of you, right now? Here is our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll cover the true meaning of apocalypse, decode the 7 seals, look at a cross-traditional map, decipher all those wild symbols, examine the actual cost of literalism, and finally, get into some practical inner work. Let's get to it.
Section 1. The true meaning of apocalypse, hiding in plain sight.
So, we're starting with a linguistic hook that completely shatters the established view of this text. The very first word is our ultimate interpretive key, apocalypsis. It literally means an interior unveiling, a making visible of what was hidden. It absolutely does not mean a countdown to global catastrophe. Even Plato used this exact same word to describe philosophical enlightenment. And the Apostle Paul? He used it to describe his own interior reception of the gospel. The book's title is literally announcing a process of making something visible, uncovering the world exactly as your egoic mind constructs it.
And you know what's wild? This brilliantly illustrates how the early church actually understood the text. For the first 3 centuries, early scholars like Origen read apocalyptic texts allegorically, like a psychic drama or a map of the soul's journey. So why on earth do we think of it as external doom today? Well, the literalist view won out simply because the institution that backed it won a major political contest in the 4th century, post-Constantine. They codified the literal doom and gloom as a state position, completely suppressing the original interior reading.
Moving on to Section 2. The 7 seals decoded, the interior architecture.
Let's look at the structural heart of Revelation. The first 4 seals, the famous 4 horsemen, they aren't historical events at all. They actually map out the daily oscillation of our ego identification. These are interior territories. The white horse, that's your conquering ego, full of spiritual ambition and pride. The red horse is inner war, the ego literally committing violence against the self. Then you have the black horse, representing the scarcity mind, characterized by total fear and contraction. And finally, the pale horse is ego death, the difficult but totally necessary dissolution of our false self. And the truth is, we bounce between these states constantly. Now here is where it gets really interesting. Notice how the final 3 seals represent a massive psychological breakthrough. Once the ego actually begins to dissolve, we reach the 5th seal, the souls under the altar. This represents the pure witness, that pure awareness, right, beneath all your daily experiences. Then, the 6th seal's cosmic upheaval is basically a psychic earthquake, where your old worldview totally collapses. Finally, ending in absolute stillness rather than some fiery destruction, the 7th seal is silence in heaven, non-dual awareness, the absolute stillness beyond the ego.
Section 3. A cross-traditional map, the universal matrix. To prove this isn't just some isolated one-off prophecy, we have to look at how this exact map pops up all across the globe. Honestly, the convergence here is staggering. When you look at 8 totally independent traditions, including the ones mapped out right here, like Kabbalah, Vedanta, Sufism, and even entirely secular 20th century Jungian psychology, they all independently map the exact same 7-stage interior territory. Jung's concept of ego inflation perfectly matches the white horse. The Sufi concept of fana, or annihilation, matches the pale horse. And the Vedantic samadhi matches the absolute silence of the 7th seal. There's no way these traditions had historical contact with John of Patmos when he wrote Revelation around 95 CE. They just arrived at the exact same interior map, completely on their own.
Section 4. Beasts, whores, and cities, symbols from the inside.
The absolute crucial point here is recontextualizing this notorious imagery into psychological archetypes, what Jung called autonomous complexes, that every single one of us has to encounter. Using this sort of Trojan horse technique, we take the famous 666 and reveal it for what it truly is on a psychological level. It's Jung's negative animus. It's the force that takes over when your ego is incredibly inflated and completely cut off from its divine ground. The beast isn't some future political dictator. It's the archetype of unconscious power operating purely on the logic of domination and acquisition, right inside your own psyche.
Then we have the Whore of Babylon, which is probably one of the most misread figures in all of religious literature. Far from being some moral condemnation of female sexuality, this figure is actually a dire warning about our addiction to worldly power structures and the seduction of the material world. It symbolizes how deeply intoxicated we get by status, wealth, and institutional legitimacy. When the text says, "Come out of her, my people," it's not giving you geographic relocation advice. It's giving you interior advice to disentangle your mind from that seduction.
And finally, the image that closes the whole book, the New Jerusalem. Instead of a future physical city dropping from the sky like institutions want you to believe, this is a present-day recognition of a restored consciousness. It is the integrated psyche, the original state before the fall into duality. It means having direct access to the divine with absolutely zero intermediaries required. The divine and the human are no longer experienced as separate things.
Section 5. The Cost of Literalism. Apocalyptic Paralysis.
So why does any of this matter to us today? Well, because interpreting these symbols as literal external events actively harms us. Researchers studying literalist end times beliefs have documented a very real phenomenon called apocalyptic paralysis. When you view the apocalypse as a future external event, your only job becomes waiting and endurance. And when you wait for a scheduled evacuation, you become entirely passive. This deeply reduces your personal agency, and you just end up deferring the really hard inner work of self-examination. You become highly dependent on institutions to manage your waiting rather than going through your own ego integration.
To put some numbers to this esoteric theory, analytical judgments from our source data assign a solid 78% probability that Revelation's primary meaning is about consciousness awakening and not external doom.
Building on that textual evidence, that number actually jumps to an 85% probability that the original Greek usage of the word apocalypsis strictly denotes an interior unveiling. Zooming out to the global landscape, the data reveals a massive 91% probability that parallel awakening frameworks exist across all major world traditions, using nearly identical symbolic language.
And here's the kicker. There's a 72% probability that waiting around for external salvation functionally suppresses your own psychological integration. The literalist interpretation is quite literally blocking your inner work. Section 6. Practical Inner Work, Diagnosing the Self.
All right, so this isn't just an academic exercise. We can turn this ancient text into a modern mirror. Here is how you can actually apply it. Step 1. Recognize that you are likely oscillating between those first 4 seals right now. Identify if you're feeling spiritual pride or maybe inner scarcity. Step 2. Stop waiting for the end of the world or some external event to come save you. The silence of the 7th seal is available to you right now. And step 3. Use the beast as a diagnostic tool for your ego. Really track where your behavior patterns are operating on domination and self-preservation.
When Revelation says the old order of things has passed away, it's not predicting the physical earth being destroyed. It is talking about your ego's operating system. That whole architecture of fear, scarcity, and separation is being replaced by a new, integrated way of seeing the exact same reality, where the divine is recognized as the ground of everything. So I'm going to leave you with this incredibly provocative diagnostic question straight from the imagery of the Whore of Babylon and the beast. What are you drunk on? Intoxicating you into identifying with the world system. Which seal are you in right now, and what part of your psyche is playing the beast? Take a minute today to look inward, lift the veil, and begin your own apocalypse.